Another video from Meenan Transmission. Two locations, one in Willow Grove and one in Lansdale. You can reach at MeenanTransmissions.com. Vehicle we're working on today is actually a Volkswagen with an 01P transmission. That's a heavy-duty version that's put in. This is a EuroVan. It's 2003 EuroVan. This this vehicle was brought to us actually from Hershey, and actually the gentleman saw the YouTube videos that we had and brought it over. So anyway, this transmission was rebuilt allegedly, and customer spent like $4,500. And some of the things that we see, transmission was built recently, actually in 2017. If you look here, you can see these clutches are worn to a point where they're actually, I would say, need to be replaced. The drum itself is blacked, blackened up. This obviously got very, very hot. Here are the other clutches here. Pan has a bit of metal in it. But one of the more noticeable things we saw is just there were some missing components. You can see that the pump is chewed up. This may have been from the prior rebuild, because we didn't see evidence of that washer present. You can see that went into the pump here, so the pump is no good. You can also look on this K2 clutch drum and see where the sealing rings were riding. Okay, you can see the range there. Sealing rings, the end thrust is set up by that washer. Sealing ring area where it interacts should be very small. This is a sealing ring right here. You can see that this drum was flopping around because of the washer being missing. On the exploded view, the washer here is component 211. That was not present. One of the other things we noticed, sealing rings, actually this is not a sealing ring, this is a molded piston. Molded pistons should have a level of flexibility. We look here, I can bend that and it conforms and goes back, okay? So this vehicle came in with a no reverse condition. So here is the piston that gets applied for reverse. I was looking at this piston. The material itself is to a point where it's hardened, brittle. This was never touched, this was never replaced. In fact, if I walk around it, I can just snap this off, okay? So this is what happens. This is a hardened old piston. This drum was never disassembled. In addition, this is what feeds that clutch. You can see that this O-ring here, I want to see if I can make sure that this is clear in the video, it's very flattened out. Well, that O-ring goes and seals against the bottom of this clutch housing or piston housing, okay? That was bad. So it's very obvious that back end of the unit where the problem that we're having is a result of probably not replacing the components. Here we have, you can see that the O-ring, even on the fill tube, this is flattened out. O-ring clearly wasn't replaced. You can see that this O-ring is flattened out. That O-ring was not replaced either. So when you see this stuff, it's just typical shortcut rebuild. And so they did the bare bones minimum of what needed to be done, and just shipped it down the road. And an unsuspecting consumer who bought it, anticipating that or thinking that the transmission was redone, was deceived. So here we have some other additional hard parts stuff that we saw. You can see that there's a bit of pitting here. Now, potentially when that washer self-destructed, it generated a material that got ingested between. This is the pinion shaft, and it has a small pilot bearing, and the pilot bearing rides on the shaft, so it's critical that it has a good surface for it to ride. But in addition, the bearings themselves are damaged and pitted up. Okay, here we have other, the actual carrier bearings. You can see that they're pitted up, and the race in the differential is also pitted up and chewed up. So we have a transmission that very clearly was not completely rebuilt. This was a transmission that was repaired, and it's very obvious from what we see that not all the components that should have been replaced. These rubber and polymer components deteriorate over time and with thermal cycles, and it's odd that they would go through and replace these molded pistons in this area of the transmission, but not replace the ones that are in a critical area of the transmission here where they actually just crack and break because they've gotten so hardened and brittle. In addition, saw that the speed sensor here is melted. You can actually see it's melted through. You can see the windings on the sensor. You can also, this is another one of the speed sensors. This one actually looks like it was glued in. So, but this is the kind of stuff we see. Like I said, this customer spent $4,500 to have this transmission rebuilt, and the rebuild that they got was certainly not what they paid for. So all is fixable, but of course we have some additional hard parts requirements, with the pump and potentially the differential components and bearings.